That's what I was waiting for. So, good morning. Welcome to another episode on Dopamine Dialogues. I am honored to have two amazing souls on the show today, Robby Cobb, all the way from Puerto Rico, and Kyle Sumrow. I hope I'm saying that correctly,
You got
all
it
the
right.
way from Texas. So, I'm always amazed at how this show, I mean, I started it so small and how it's just traveled across oceans. And I think that's the power of technology, which is what today's conversation really centers around. But for me, what is important about the conversation today is the heart and the service behind the whole topic, behind TechMySchool, which Robby and Kyle are going to talk to us about. And it affirms for me a powerful truth that we can change the world one village at a time, one community at a time, when one person refuses to look away. Um, so, Robby, you and your wife took a sabbatical. I mean, after 20 years in education across various countries, including Africa, you decided to take a sabbatical in Puerto Rico for a year. And I imagine you'd expected to find rest and fishing. But what you actually found were classrooms without resources, teachers without support, and children actually that were being limited in their capacity and their potential because of the circumstances. And you did something amazing. I think, you can talk us through that, but that moment didn't just move you, it must have called you to then sell the money you had reserved for a boat to start up this nonprofit, TechMySchool. Um, and now it is, I mean, it's empowering generations with technology. And it serves 40 schools, if I'm correct, 5,000 students every day, and training 500 teachers every month, just to name a few of the things that TechMySchool has expanded into. So, welcome, both of you. Excited to have this conversation. So, starting with you, Robby, you decided to take a sabbatical. What inspired that, and what was the plan?
Yeah, so I was really close to landing on Zanzibar. My wife and I, we love Stone Town. We had just gone through there during COVID. It was one of the few places that allowed, travelers and stuff like that. So we were teaching in Nigeria, and we were very, very close to choosing Zanzibar as our destination for the 1 year sabbatical to write the book. But really, we were just looking for a beautiful ocean and a place to rest, like as you were saying. And we were kind of wrestling with Zanzibar, we were wrestling with Koh Samui, Thailand, and then Puerto Rico. And we landed on Puerto Rico because of, it having all those qualities. And it had one thing that Zanzibar did not, which was Costco. So Costco is like a big supermarket with all the American goods in there. And so we kind of, after living in Lagos, we were like, oh, let's just go to a place with a few more comforts besides just the beautiful weather and the island and everything. And yeah, so that was the goal. The goal was to rest. It was to reflect on our years teaching both domestically in the United States, Hawaii, California, and then internationally, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Nigeria. And then yeah, write a book on it on ed tech. I had gone from teacher to teacher trainer to tech director, a very similar path Kyle fell into as well. Kyle and I actually worked together in Saudi Arabia 10 years ago in 2015, I believe. And yeah, so that was basically it, there to rest. And once I got to Puerto Rico, I noticed that the schools were very similar to Nigeria in terms of just the way they looked, kind of what was going on in the classrooms, the resources available. And so that was shocking for me because Puerto Rico is, if you don't know, an American territory. Everyone here is an American citizen. So it's essentially exactly like a state. The only difference being that people here can't vote for the presidency, but they can vote for the primaries. But really, besides that distinction and the fact that people also speak Spanish, Everyone here has equal rights and should have equal everything in terms of roads, hospitals, education, etc. But that's just not the case. And I just came to this kind of place unknowing this because I had worked inner city schools in Hawaii, and I was expecting a similar situation with, a certain standard of education and everything else. So at first I kind of told myself, maybe I'm overthinking it. I have two boys and put them in schools as well and just expected, for it to at least be at the Hawaii level. And when it wasn't, um, I looked a little deeper. I kind of thought, it's like when a doctor goes on vacation, he's like, I'm taking a break, but then he's seeing like people with broken necks along the side of the road and, hobbling around, and you're just like knowing that you can help. Yeah, it was a bit compelling, as you were saying. Like it's bad enough to where I just couldn't rest.
Yeah.
And so I went from new parent at this school to training all staff within the first month. And I did that by just approaching the director saying, hi, I'm a new parent and I know parents can be crazy and all that kind of stuff. I know we're hysterical, but I've been an educator for many years. I noticed that your school doesn't have a library, and we'd love to give your school a digital library. There's no public libraries in Puerto Rico, so kids really can't read without books. So can we get you guys a digital library? I'll drum up some computers for your classrooms and then put together a digital library of 40,000 books using Get Epic. And when she was kind of like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. She's an open-minded director. Actually, uh, her school, we've been working with them now 5 years. I'm a little bit sleepy because I was at her school late last night. We helped them grow in student body from about 50 kids to now well over 200. And
Wow.
because of that, they got a bigger campus. And now this campus actually has a physical space for a library. And so I was up late last night. My wife and I, we were actually building this library for them. We turned this space into a both podcast studio and then also modernized library with books, but also with IMAX and stuff like that. Thanks to Kyle as well. He helped with the process with the tech. And so, who is this fine gentleman next to me as well is Kyle Sumrow. Kyle and I worked together in Saudi Arabia, but he's been a buddy of mine for many years. And we'd go to these different countries. He would go from, Switzerland to Vietnam. He'll tell you his story, but we always kind of stayed in touch. And when you're a tech director in a school, you're kind of one of one. There's only one of you on campus. So you really don't have anyone to go to when you have problems or, you need a thought partner or something like that. Because I mean, if you're a fourth grade teacher, there might be five other fourth grade teachers, right? Or even just an elementary teacher in general.
Mm.
You have other people you can bounce ideas off of. But as a CTO, you're it. And when people have problems, they come to you and they expect answers. So Kyle and I stayed buddies. And as I started this kind of journey of going down the TechMySchool route, I had reached out to him and just kind of shared what was going on and, the experience and those kinds of things. So essentially, one school, the school that first took us on, turned into two schools because their teachers started talking and they were like, hey, these gringos, as they call us, these gringos are helping us. Can you help, tell them to help you as well, ask them for help. And so I had other teachers from other schools saying, hey, we'd love to have some computers, we'd love to have some training, we'd love to have all the good things you're giving to that school. Can you do it for us? And we were like, sure, we'd love to. And so we went from one school to two, then to four. And then right around four schools, yes, I went from because the education, it wasn't a one school problem. It's a whole island problem. And some people ask, like, why are you doing this? Are you Puerto Rico? You look Puerto Rican. And the answer is no. Everyone here is an American. I just felt like, as my countrymen, these kids deserve it. And I'm a global citizen too. I've been to 65 countries. I've lived and worked in Africa and Asia and all these different places. So it just these kids were getting ripped off essentially. And yeah, so I started the process, and I'll tag team Kyle into this conversation because I don't want to monopolize it. But Kyle soon became part of the conversation as well. as I was scanning the world for resources and support. And Kyle at this time was working at a really high-end private school in Houston. And to help, outfit all these schools with technology, I'd reached out to some universities, but it wasn't like a lot, let's just say.
Hmm.
And so Kyle was the next big get for us. So Kyle, please start talking so I can stop.
Before you go, Kyle, I just wanted to
Sure.
ask you, Robbie, how did you fund, one school to two schools in the beginning?
Yeah. So there's just so much need here on the island. And um, honestly, it was the teachers at the school. They enjoyed the professional development we were giving them. They enjoyed the technology. They enjoyed the software, the administrative planning, all the things that we were there. We were, fully committed on serving the school. They had never had any kind of ed tech leadership, any tech director leadership. And they're like, wow, this is great. My life is so much better now because my, I have a library now. I have, 50,000 books. I have an email that's a professional email. When I was kind of asking him, what's your email? They had only personal emails. And so I was like, not good. You can't have a personal email as an, 40-year-old male emailing your 12-year-old female students. It's just not a good look. And so getting them a school email and getting all the students email and just there's this kind of enthusiasm I'm coming in with every month. Like, hey, I always brought food and drinks and stuff, but like, hey, there's these guys that are really nice. They're bringing in food, they're bringing in drinks. And now I have a computer, now I have all these different things for my classroom. And they're just kind of, I don't know if they're bragging or talking about with their friends at church, like, hey, we got this at our school. And it's a small community. We're on the eastern side of the island and it's, not the big city. So they all kind of know each other and there's only so many churches, right? And so they're kind of talking about us and they're like, hey, TechMySchool is this new nonprofit. They're giving us stuff for free. You should ask them for free stuff too. And who doesn't want free stuff? And so when other teachers were kind of like cautiously, hey, I heard you guys help schools. Would you be interested in helping us? And we're like, sure. And we start helping another school. Well, now you have a whole new set of, 1 degree of separation away from computers and support and technology and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, so then it soon became two and then three and then four. And Tech My School was kind of born.
So donors then, or you mentioned in our introductory call that there's a tax exemption in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so how can you keep doing it? So I had set aside about $30,000 for this boat money, but the boat money does run out. I wasn't going to buy a yacht, a Jeff Bezos yacht or something where I could serve indefinitely. I'd say like 30,000. And yeah, so I was getting close once that 4-year mark hit, I was getting very close to the end and of the money and my
You mean four
sabbatical time.
schools, the four
With
school
the
mark.
with
Oh, I was going 4 years. Wow,
no,
$30,000.
the four
It
school.
was like
Yeah.
1 year, basically.
Yeah, it was about close to 18 months because we got out of school, in June and we were prepping for Puerto Rico. We got there in September and we started serving within that first month. And you know, a year goes by and some extra months and we had raised maybe $3,000 in that amount of time. And that $3,000 was a lot to think of because people are giving us money, but it really wasn't like $3,001 individual donations. It was one sweet lady. She was retired. She had worked as an international teacher and she just volunteered and she just saw what we were doing and she'd come to the schools because we were kind of reaching out like, hey, if anyone wants to join us on our mission and if you're a teacher and you want to give back, we now have all these schools. Her name is Polly Revis, and she came and joined us. And so when we were training teachers, she was a part of it. And she was just a retiree. And she's like, hey, I see you guys using your own money to buy food for schools and all this stuff. Here's $3,000. Buy yourself some groceries. And we were just kind of like, no, we'll keep it for the schools and stuff. And yeah, we were walking along the beach and it was getting towards the end of our time. And we ran into a couple, another expat couple on the beach, and we were like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And what are you doing here? And that's always kind of the case when you're an expat in another country is you see another former, fellow expat. You're like, "Hey, what's up?" And you become kind of instant friends. And they were like, "Oh, we're here for something called Act 60." And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" They're like, "You aren't here for Act 60?" I'm like, "Nope, never heard of it." And they're like, "Well, Act 60 essentially is." America's greatest tax haven. So if you're an American citizen living, and it sounds funny because everyone here is an American citizen, but if you're an expat X 60 person, someone from the mainland, and you move to Puerto Rico, you can apply to be part of what's called Act 60. And what it does is it affords you as an American to pay 0% capital gains on fixed income, on your short-term capital gains, long-term capital gains. If you have a business, instead of that business paying like 40% tax, it pays 4%, but then you can pass through it to yourself at 0%. And then if you have any kind of incomes off island, again, off either 0% or at the most 4%. So it's massive savings for a lot of people. So there's a lot of people who like own banks. Famous celebrities like Jake Paul lives here because he's exporting his services. He has businesses in the States, mainland, and now he pays 0% tax. And so it's this massive tax bubble haven for some very wealthy individuals. But the one caveat is, well, they have two caveats. One caveat is you have to stay on island for half the year. So 180 days, you have to be on island. The purpose for this act is to try to attract wealthy individuals to live in Puerto Rico and invest in the local economy. It doesn't have to be consecutive, but it just has to be 180 days overall throughout the year. And then the second thing is you have to donate either 5,000, depending on when you come, either 5,000 or 10,000. And so it started with zero donations. And then after like maybe the first 5 years, they're like, you know what, we should make these people give back to the community a little bit instead of just buying themselves, mansions and boats and stuff, real boats. Let's make them donate 5,000. And so they were going to donate 5,000. But the problem with that was after a few years, they're like, well, these people are donating 5,000 to a nonprofit, but all they're doing is like one guy will start a nonprofit, a social group, and then all of his buddies will donate to that nonprofit and they'll just use the money to party or throw themselves like themed events or whatever. And so they're like, okay, now we have to have at least 5,000 more that goes to actually helping kids. So 5,000 will be 501c3, and the other 5,000 has to be towards helping local
Yeah.
kids eradicating child poverty. And so it could be up to 10,000. And so, yeah, long story short, they're like, you could be raising up to $10,000 per person. And so why aren't you doing that? And that's what I was asking myself. He didn't really say that. He was just kind of like, oh, we have to donate every year. You guys sound great. We love to donate to you guys if you guys are really helping schools. And I was like, heck yes, we're helping schools. And I'm like, I didn't know this was a thing. So
Wow.
we went out there and raised money for about 90 days. It was like at the end of the year, calendar year. And we raised about $287,000. And
What?
so that seems like a lot of money, but really it was probably like 20 people, 30 people, it didn't take too many people to do it. We just kind of hit the market, went into all these different networking events, different groups. We posted on Facebook. We just started broadcasting it.
Yeah.
When we were first doing it, we did broadcast a little bit, but we didn't really, it was kind of like a personal project. We just didn't really think people would really care. I mean, we posted like here and there, like, hey, if you want to join us, come volunteer with us, or if you're a school that needs help, we're here, we can help you guys. But once we realized that there was some real funds that could be raised, and we had honestly no idea how much we'd raise. Yeah, we were like, okay, I guess this is a thing. And so we stayed an additional year and we're like, let's see how we can do if
Oh,
we
we
put a
can
full
make
year
it.
into fundraising. Yeah. And so with that extra money, we went from 4 schools to 14 schools. And then we raised $1 million the next year. And so we were like, all right,
Amazing.
we're staying and we're growing and expanding. So we started hiring people and bringing people in, and the expansion grew. Now, Kyle, please tell us why you're here and how
Yes.
you got with us.
Kyle, enter Kyle all the way in Texas.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in Houston.
What
Yeah, so
was the,
Robbie, go ahead.
sorry, Kyle, I keep interrupting you. What was the moment for you that, I know you spoke about it briefly, but there was a moment where you were like, I need to be a part of this. Please take us through that.
Yeah, so if I rewind a little bit,
Yeah.
for your listeners who are not educators, like in education, we are like a lot of professions, we use a lot of acronyms, and one of them is the PLC. So teachers talk a lot about their PLC. That's a professional learning community. And it's essentially the one of the main ways that we as educators talk about what's working and what's not, essentially like in a larger group. It's a really great way for us to kind of reflect on our practice. And Robbie has been a huge part of that PLC for me for since we've known each other. And he referred to how we stayed in touch. We stayed in touch because we're friends, but we also stayed in touch because we had a similar job. And there were always things that we were coming up with. Hey, have you thought about this? Or like, man, I tried this and it flopped. And so we've been bouncing ideas off each other. So when Robbie sort of is in the throes of having this sabbatical year. And I thought it was fascinating. I was like, what a better person to write a book on educational technology, someone who's had all these, this buggy ride through across the planet, doing this work with all these different diverse communities. I was really into that. And then as he's kind of explaining, he's like, I think there may be something here where, like they need so much help. And it became a natural partnership for me. I think I started probably from day one just as a thought partner for him. And he was doing the same for me because I also had started a couple of different businesses. And, Robbie and I have always been wired like entrepreneurs and have had a partnership in that way as well. And so kind of hearing his story and what he was starting to do, I grew up in a family that had us serving in like in impoverished. I didn't grow up in poverty, but I was really struck at a young age by how serving others is really self-service in a way. Like there was nothing in my childhood that made me feel better than helping people who needed help, and that was part of why I became a teacher, and for sure why Robbie became a teacher was giving back and serving as that like local community service expanded for both of us into kind of a broader context. I saw what he was doing and it really struck a chord with me. And also when we were overseas, I don't mean for this to sound jaded or anything else, but like we were guests in other people's countries.
Yeah.
And when we would go, like we worked for these pretty wealthy private schools, but those schools all had service learning projects where we would be serving local community, local schools. Um, and in a lot of the places we lived, I was in Cameroon in West Africa for 2 years. I was in Saudi. That's where Robbie and I met. I was in Vietnam. All these places they have a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of good you can do while you're there, right? So we we got into the habit of going in and serving, but in a way, as a foreigner, you go in and you help, and you're happy to help, and it feels good, and you know that you're doing a good thing. But in some ways, in the back of your mind, it's kind of like I'm in Cameroon. I'll do what I can while I'm here, but I know I'm leaving, and these aren't my people. Like these are people, and equally important to any other group of people. But in some ways, I almost felt like this is kind of like Cameroon is a Cameroon problem and not a USA problem. Even though I don't know if that makes sense, but Puerto Rico was different because these are our people. And to me, we live in one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. And the fact that we have pockets of people that have been completely abandoned was unacceptable, completely unacceptable. So I'm on the sideline. I'm cheering Robbie on. Go, buddy. Go help them. You're helping our people. And so that was the start for me, was like, well, I have to volunteer. Like the least I can do is take some of the extra computers and things that we are getting rid of as a wealthy school in Texas. The least I can do is package those things up and send them over there and let him use those to put them in schools, right? Least I could do. Um, with almost zero effort, I had access to this resource of used computers, which to my organization were essentially worthless. They had been depreciated over, 4 or 5 years, but they still have life left in them. And that depreciated sort of, on paper, worthless asset for my organization, that's a lifeline for his organization and the kids that he's serving. And so we started sending more and more. We were even collecting computers from our community because our community loved this story as well. The parents and the students, they loved hearing about what their old computers were doing in Puerto Rico for these kids. And so it kind of became a community effort, right? And so we ended up having literally pallets, huge like warehouse shipping pallets full of used computers and iPads and other classroom equipment. It wasn't just computers. We started collecting from our neighborhood schools around us that were also wealthy and wanted to give back. They were giving devices. We got the most ridiculously huge iPad cart that weighed like 800 pounds. Like everything, we were shameless. We were like, hey, anything you have, we will send to Puerto Rico. And then Robby and Irina, his wife, have one of their superpowers is like their prolific publishing on social media. There is no hiding what they're doing every day because they are literally putting media out constantly. And like if you want to get a little, tug on the heartstrings, just check them out, right? On Instagram, especially, I think is where probably the bulk of the media goes. But Robby's really posts a lot on LinkedIn too, if you follow him as more professional. But seeing what the organization's doing, a lot of the following is, I think a lot of the inertia is supported by the fact that they are still publishing. People like giving and donating to an organization where they can sort of see their impact, right?
Yeah.
Just like we serve because we like to see and feel the impact of our service, people like to donate to organizations that they know are every dollar that is going into the machine is going into these classrooms, and it's really been an amazing thing. So that's a really long-winded way of saying I got involved as a volunteer because I was wired for it, and Robby was encouraging it. He's like, hey, we want your thinking, we want your help, we like, what else can we do with this organization? And we got to the point where we were donating equipment for a couple of years, and I thought, and actually, I think it was Robby's idea. He's like, you remember when we were in Saudi and we used to take kids on these week without walls trips? We would fly our kids like the least sustainable service possible. We did it for our kids, but we would put trips together where we would fly to Cambodia or we'd fly to Vietnam or we'd fly to places that needed help, and we would take our kids, and that was a transformational experience for our these kids who grow up kind of with a silver spoon in their hand. They get this experience where they get to see poverty firsthand. They get to go help these people, shake hands with them, become part of their community for a few days, and it really humanizes sort of. That's where our international school superpower comes from, is the global citizenship. You can, Jimmy Buffett said, you can't tell people about the ocean, they have to see it, right? And the same with service. I think you have to do it, you have to be involved. And so, long story short, we brought a group of kids. Robby said, "Why don't you get a group of your high school kids together and bring them down here, and let's do a service learning trip for them." And I will tell you, it changed their lives. It was transformational for that group. That group also. So yes, they were serving, and they had an impact on the communities they were serving. But like I said, serving others is self-service. They learned firsthand that like they got to bond. They were in the trenches together. They had this experience that like 14, 15-year-old kids don't get to have very often. Not in this community that I'm in. So they got to have this transformational experience, and it was really bringing back a lot of the kind of the good vibes that I had of serving in the places we lived. Fast forward to a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, probably, I was still working at this school here in Houston, and Robby said, "Listen, you guys have done so much for us. You've donated so much." And for me, it was like, of course, it's not a big deal for us. We knew it was the right thing to do, but he said, "Look, I'd like to pay you back by coming in and doing my evaluation that we've put together over the last 4 years. We have this process called the individualized technology assessment. We'll come in and it's basically a gap analysis for like educational technology programs, which turns into a strategic planning process." And I think in my ego, I had kind of bought into this idea that, well, I work for one of the top schools in the state of Texas. I mean, we
What could
have,
you teach me? Yeah, what
yeah,
could you
what could you
possibly?
possibly teach me? That was my ego speaking, but that's very much what I thought. And but I also knew like this could be a growth experience for Robby. This can help his company. It would be good exposure for him, and like we'll serve him by letting him come. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Meanwhile,
I didn't verbalize that, but when he came, and I was like, "Tell me what the process is going to be like." And he said, "No, you have to experience this as a client. You don't get the inside track." And I thought, well, I respect that. I want to. I do want to see what this feels like from the client side. So he came in and put on a master class in strategic planning for a school who was already in our own minds, one of the highest achieving, and like, what did we have to learn? And it was a slap in the face for me in a way to think like, you know what? I think I've been saying this my whole career, but I don't know if I believed it until today. But everybody in every school can grow. There's room for growth for everybody. And like that, what we had figured out was that like he came in and helped us to kind of amplify some of the things that we were doing well.
Mm.
There was a lot of support in it. It was it was like counseling in a way, like you guys are really killing it in these areas, and you need to keep doing that. And here's ways you can even boost your impact in these areas, whatever. But when we got to the pieces where we were talking about like just it was just about our mindset, and it wasn't to say that our mindset was wrong, just that there were so many things that we had never thought about before, and that process was absolutely like kind of earth shattering for me. I was a professional, kind of top of my game according to the org chart and on paper. I was at this top tier school. Like, where else was I going to go as a CTO? Big bougie private school that is producing professional athletes and amazing professionals in all these different fields. Like, and what I realized is just this growth mindset. Like you can't if you have a growth mindset, like you're unstoppable. There's no place you can't take your organization. So I think probably within a few days, I told Robby after we went through this process, I said, look, I love my job. It's great. Great kids, great colleagues, great package. This is my hometown. I'm from Houston. Everything about this is really good. And still there was something inside of me that was like, bro, I'm in. Whatever you need from me. Let's do this thing. Like let's go scale our impact. Let's figure out how to take this to the masses. So,
Wow.
which is maybe a good segue too for Robby to tell you a little bit about like what we did was what he's been doing has been going through this process of helping schools to go through strategic planning, but it's a very labor intensive process, and we can only touch a certain number of schools in any given time period because there's so much hand holding and like there's just a lot of like person hours that are required to do this process. So Robby actually solved some of that problem in terms of scaling by creating a piece of software that can, in to some degree, can replace us in that process. So I don't know if you want to hear about
Yeah,
that, but
I
that's
stole
actually
Kyle. I stole him
You
from a great
stole him.
school.
So you quit your CTO job at this prestigious school in Houston.
yeah,
Done.
I did. Done.
That's
Yeah.
the
So I'm
impact that it had on you.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was one of those life-changing kind of moments for me having him come through there. I both love and hate Robby for coming through there and kind of upsetting my perfectly, you know, polished apple cart.
Polished world. Robbie, I'm very interested in this diagnostic, what is it, the individualized tech plan, because it sounds
Yeah.
like, that was very powerful in reflecting the growth mindset back to Kyle's school and, inspiring Kyle to join you. How did you create the elements of that diagnostic that you knew would then be impactful enough to give you a strategic roadmap for the school? And what was that process like?
Yeah, so I think any tech director or anyone who's in administration, when you walk into a new school, you kind of have a set of like a checklist you have in your mind of like, okay, this is something that we have, this is something we don't have, this school has, this is where I need to focus. You start to think that intuitively. And I remember when I first walked into to Lagos, Nigeria at the American school there, and it was that same thing. I was like, okay, this school has this, it doesn't have this. And I was like, I really need to, you know, export this thinking and make it synthesize into just core essence of school. Like what do I really care about? When people walk into my office, I want them to know what I care about. And I, as a teacher, I always had little slogans and artifacts on my board. So when people came, when parents or other teachers came in, they could kind of see this is what I'm about. Like when I was a teacher, I used to have a big slogan above my desk that said, "Speed is not intelligence." And that was when I was working with elementary school students because kids would try to finish really quickly. And I'm like, just because you finish fast doesn't mean you got it right or you're smart or anything like that. Or if you're just one of those slower processors, you could still be brilliant, but just go at a slower pace. So that was one of my slogans I had on my board. And so I remember just distinctly writing things I care about, and it was improving educational systems. So that's everything you can touch, make policy, computers, the physical world, and the policy, right? Improving educational systems, building staff capacity. So that was getting in front of teachers and, training them and those kinds of things, and then empowering kids, because you can't really empower a kid with these 21st century skills if you don't have a structural outfit that affords them to, like having computers and internet and all those things and policy and curriculum. And then even if you have those kinds of things, you need a set of adults who know what they're doing, who feel confident to facilitate all this new technology. Part of my core values is I love to learn and serve, and I love to help. So those are like my two, core values in myself. And so I know that I got into technology because I love to learn, and technology's always changing. So there's always these things to learn. And then there's always people who like, what is that? How'd you do that? What is that app? What is this website? What is this tool? And so the adults need to be confident, because you're not going to, facilitate or teach that knowledge if you haven't had an expertise or experience with it yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so I knew kind of knew those are the secret sauces, but I'd love to say I'm this genius person that knew how to put everything together, and I'm a maestro, and I
You can say
developed this
it. You
formula.
can
But
totally say it, Robbie.
no, but I mean,
I'll
I
say it
think
for you.
good educators steal ideas and have PLCs, like Kyle was saying. So Kyle's a part of my PLC. I had a huge network of other great tech directors that I work with, and also other people in schools, so leaders. So I had a really close friend who is he's a superintendent of a school in Africa as well. He's a board member of TechMySchool. He's the superintendent at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia at ICS. And then also another great director of teaching and learning, a curriculum director. Her name's Sarah Cisco. I kind of immediately, when I was starting this process, like, hey, her name's Sarah. And I was like, hey, Sarah, we're going through this process, and here's my ideas, and here's what we're structuring. Can I steal your brain? Can you be a part of this process with me? And let's build this as a collective. So there was a number of people besides Kyle, Earl, Sarah, and many others who I'd kind of reached out to. And at the time, I was also writing a book on ed tech. So I was interviewing, 40 different tech directors from around the world, both in
Mm.
California, where I'm from, to Japan, and just all the top people I knew. I was like, hey, I need to interview and, just ask them what's going on in your school. What are the things that you're kind of up to, and what do you think about this thing that I'm doing here? When you're working with your staff, what do you do? And so through many interviews and, years of experience and just this conglomerate of just different ideas, we put together a process of essentially using that essence of what I cared about and putting it into fruition, I guess you could say. And um, ITP, where I came up with that idea, was simply from an IEP. So in education, there's something called an individualized educational plan. So every student who's either really high achieving or low achieving or has a disability, or could just be even a mainstream student, is afforded what's called an IEP, an individualized educational plan, because we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of every student, because every student's different. You might be really
Different.
good at math or science or whatever, but you're lower somewhere else. So every teacher tries to create their own IEP for a kid. If it's called differentiation. And so I was like every kid, every school is different, has certain tools, has certain beliefs, has certain, financial abilities, and student bodies. So we need to create an individualized tech plan for each of them. And yeah, that was just kind of how we approach it. And that's really the best way of having a big transformational impact at a school, is to go in with an open mind and to simply just get people in a room and ask questions and kind of put them through this process of finding out where they are, what do they believe, and what do they care about, and figuring out their school, so then we can create a plan that fits perfectly for their school,
Mm.
rather than just this one size fit all, like you have to be this person, you have to do this, your student should
Mm.
be here, and we're going to push you to be where we think you should be. And yeah, so it's a really easy process. We've helped schools in the slums of Kenya to the wealthiest schools in Europe and in the United States. So, and here in Puerto Rico as well. So we've worked with a ton of different kinds of schools going through this individualized process. And as Kyle was alluding to, fast forward a couple years, we had done this process, 100 times, really refined it and perfected it. And we attend conferences, educator conferences for a number of reasons. TechMySchool being that, because Kyle and I had both attended these great conferences throughout our career, and we're both speakers, so I'd kind of been part of that speaking circuit of, I've went to the ASA conference in Cape Town. That was my first time to SA, was going to Cape Town, and we visited the American School of Cape Town, beautiful campus, and we were at the convention center there, presented there, attended it as well. Abu Dhabi, Greece, Thailand. We'd been all over presenting in these really great conferences. And so we knew the power of kind of that network and reaching out to people and stuff like that. So we started going to conferences as a booth. And what we do as these vendors is essentially just talking to everyone. So from teachers, we talk to them and say, hey, if you're an educator and you love our story and what we're doing, or if you love to learn, come to our conference, because TechMySchool started to put on these great conferences for the teachers here locally because they couldn't afford to go to a world-class conference. So we started to put that on for
To
them
them.
as just one of our services. Yeah. And we're doing it again this year, April 10th and 11th. George Kuros, very famous educator, took a pay cut and to come serve our community. So thank you, George, for doing that. And he's going to come and keynote for us and do some breakout panels and stuff like that. He'll be one of, over 40 speakers that'll be there. If we saw speakers who were at the event, we're like, hey, you're a great speaker. Come to our conference and speak at our conference. If we saw other vendors, we're like, hey, Seesaw, you're a big, student information or learning management system. Come work with us in Puerto Rico. We'll help push your product into the market, but give it to us for either free or at a discounted rate based off of, your but by the circumstance of the school, because we work with a wide range of schools. And so we started to reach out to all these different people and communities, and we're just like the widest net possible, finding people to help join our mission.
Yeah.
And one guy approached our little table and was just like, hey, tell us what you do, tell us your story. And I'm telling him the story that I'm telling you now, and talking about how we serve and our process and how the ITP is, because there isn't another product like it. There's no one else doing the ITP. It's a kind of a one-on-one process.
So clever.
Yeah. And so this guy was like, you know what, this is amazing. My schools really need this for our schools as well. We love what you're doing. Can you do it for 1,000 schools? I'm with Google, and I'm in charge of South Florida. So we have about 1,000 schools. We'd love to run your process through our schools. And for many companies like Brisk or Nearpod or something, that's no problem because it's a software, and they go like, yeah, here you go. But for us, it's very much it's a in-person.
It's the two of us.
Yeah, it's we have our team. We have a couple of integrators as well, but yeah, we're a very small team, and no, we can't do 1,000 schools. We'd love to do 1,000 schools for you this spring, but we can't. So we knew we had to kind of put this into a software, and so we spent 2025 essentially ideating and putting this process into a software so we can scale at a greater number. And also, we're kind of, it's both a blessing and a curse having this Act 60 donation money, because our success is stemmed off of how well we can raise money in our local community. But there's only so many donors, and there's over 2,000 nonprofits in Puerto Rico, because everyone's just like, hey, I can raise $10,000 if I ask this guy at the bar
I'm coming to Puerto Rico
for the money, and I clean up beaches, and I show him a picture of me cleaning up a beach, or me, serving cats, and he has a cat. So there's so many, it's like a cash grab for all these people, and there's kind of little oversight with it. So it's like we're kind of stuck in this rut of just like, we have an island full of low income people with a very small population of higher income people who can donate. But, I have kids, I'm serving schools during the days. There's only so much interest you can raise, once you hit market saturation. So we need to find other ways to raise money. And, we tried to get grants, and we've been fairly successful with that, but not anything crazy, not anything sustainable. But we're like, how can we drum up extra business to support our mission? And so we started creating software. And Tech Plan Genie is the name of that software that helps us basically help schools go through the process of following our steps in our modules. There's 12 of them in total. And it's a strategic planning module where they can go through it without us, follow the steps, aggregate the data. There's tutorial videos, there's, little,
Amazing.
the why, the how, all those kinds of things, and downloadable artifacts and that kind of stuff. So then schools can kind of go through it. And yeah, by the end, they get this downloadable, editable plan, a tech plan. They click generate, tech plan, and it creates this masterpiece tech plan. And yeah, schools can use that as a framework as they're working within their schools. And then in this walled garden of data that they've aggregated through these great conversations they've recorded, following our process, they now have a bot that knows everything about their school. So now they have a thought partner, because really, as tech directors, there isn't a software for us. We have to create this PLC and scour the internet to try to find answers to questions and, build these kind of processes. And so TechPlan Genie is now a tool for them. It's
But to be
specifically
fair,
for tech.
it's not just for the like school that's wealthy enough to have a tech director. This is also an amazing tool for the school that's underfunded that does not have somebody like Robby or I in place to be able to help them sort of think through these issues. Every school is thinking about technology and how do we spend our money wisely when we have, limited resources. The amazing thing is that we basically have taken our knowledge base and put it into a box. And then the genie is looking through your
Okay.
contextual data and our knowledge base, and it's matching them up, and it's saying like for instance, I created a fake school when we were first playing with the software, and I basically reported that, we were using all Apple computers, Mac computers, and I did like fake surveys from parents and teachers, and then I got to the agent and I said, "Hey, we're thinking about going to Chromebooks to save money," and it was like, "Slow your roll there, young man." It did say that, but it was like, "You may want to make these considerations. Like, keep in mind that you surveyed your parent community and your teachers and your students, and they all really enjoy the program that you've already set up. So you've got a political piece that you have to deal with. Plus, let's talk about the technical stuff. Yeah, you'll save money because they're cheaper, but what about your infrastructure? It's already designed for Apple." Like, it was so thoughtful. It blew my mind because I was like, if
Wow.
somebody had asked me this question, it's exactly the answer I would have given them, which would have been multifaceted. They say, hey, they ask a simple question: can we save money if we do X, Y, or Z? And say like, maybe, but probably not. And like, also look at the sort of the nuances of what you're asking and how much pain it's going to cause in these other areas. So to me, it's such a cool resource for a school that does not have someone who can answer that question, to be able to have like a sort of a safe space to be able to ask this. It's really simple. It's an LLM powered, AI agent essentially. The difference between this and like ChatGPT is that you can't take your school's financial data and, throw it onto ChatGPT. Like, they're they're learning from your data, and we've created a sort of we call it a walled garden in technology, right? We've created a walled garden for your data where that LLM lives inside of this walled garden. It can't talk to the internet. Like, it is not pulling data from outside. It's just looking at what we've told it, and it's looking at what you've told it, and it's answering questions based on your context. And it's kind of I don't know that. And to me, even if it didn't have that feature, it's still worth it, because when we talk about strategic planning, and this is probably for even outside of education, strategic planning is really important for organizations to go through. The process is really, really good. The problem with it has always been the product. So you spend so much time and money putting the team together, getting the right voices at the table, and then you go through this process asking yourselves hard questions. We're trying to define our mission, our vision, strategic delimiters. We're looking at who are we as an organization and what do we want to do. That process is super important. The problem is that you end up with this shiny, file, or like, printed out packet of papers that is your strategic plan, and you put it on a shelf and it collects dust. And that's a huge
Yeah.
problem, because you put all these resources into this process that has given you this thing that now kind of is stale really quickly. And you're lucky if people are actually referring to it regularly. So what we've
Right.
done is created this thing that creates a living strategic plan, because the machine is poking you every month and saying, what did you do this month? You said you were going to do these things. Tell us what you've actually been working on. And if if there were limitations or roadblocks, why? What were the roadblocks? This is the non-judgmental thing, but what it does for you is month over month for the entire year, you're recording what you've done. And at any point, you can go in and regenerate your plan. And it is taking into consideration, hey, if you had an action item that said you needed to complete this task and you've reported that you've already completed it, it's not going to show up in your plan again because you already did it. So like it's allowing you to sort of like create this living strategic
Evolving.
plan. Yeah, it evolves with your efforts.
You
So
know what?
it's a really unique process.
What I love about this process is it's co-created with the client. So it's not something you come in and like dictating to say, like a typical consultancy would tell you what you already know, give you a plan that stays on the shelf, and then walk away and not help you convert that into execution. It sounds
That's
like
right.
it's very, very convertible. Um, and it involves, I mean, that's the whole change management thing, right? You involving the client intimately with the process. So why wouldn't there be buy-in? It's not like two gringos are coming to tell me what the gaps are, but we are actually, identifying it together. So my question is, when are you coming to Africa?
As
Now
soon as
that
Yeah.
we
you
have
have,
funding,
Yeah, so
I
we
mean,
kind of already we've dabbled our feet a little bit with it. Another great member of my PLC and member of the team, his name is Chuck Sobo. He's a Nigerian, and so I worked with him in Nigeria. And as soon as I started the process, I wanted to get him on board and you know bring him up as part of the team. So he's been with us essentially like Kyle since the beginning, working as our backend data manager and just kind of support, doing all the things behind the scenes to keep it going. Because when you work with what we have now, which is like, we've served 50 schools, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it can't be done just by one person. So it really does take a team. But our first school that we worked with in Africa is called KGSA. It's a all girls soccer school based in the slums of Nairobi. And so essentially one of our donors here, his friend also runs a nonprofit out of Colorado, and they raised money in the States to basically completely fund this school for these girls in Africa. And I think she was a former athlete, and she worked with or played on the same team as this girl who's from Kenya. And so this girl from Kenya became the director of the school, and she's getting the funding from, Colorado. And yeah, they're like, hey, we know you could help schools. Can you help this school in Africa? And, just being an international, globally minded person, I always knew that Puerto Rico, of course, is the starting point, but it's not the finish line. We want to serve all the schools we can in Puerto Rico, but we want to expand. And so Africa's, first place we'd start just because Khan had both lived and worked in Africa and West Africa, and there's just such need there. So it's a really easy transitional spot. We actually have a former colleague, friend that worked with us in Saudi Arabia, who's now he is the head of, not the head of school. Yeah, I think he's the head of school, or maybe he's the principal at AISJ in Johannesburg. So we already kind of have some friends who are already working in
road.
these kind of
yeah.
private schools in Africa that we can reach out to as kind of a satellite to show them our service and have them support locally, and then kind of vicariously or work through them or dip into Africa. But again, we can only serve schools in Puerto Rico with this Act 60 money. So
Right.
part of the curse of the Act 60 money is the fact that it can only be used for services for Puerto Rico, right? And so anything that we make, any money we make outside of Puerto Rico, like this software with TechPlan Genie or Relief Roster, which is another software that Kyle put together, um, we can use that money to then serve anyone we want, right?
hmm
Or if someone just donates. So if someone from the world donates to us, we can use all of that money to go towards a school in Africa. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I would like to serve these guys, but I want this money to be served in my community,
Right.
reach out,
hmm
say, hey, I'd like to serve this much money. I have money, but I don't have the expertise or the vehicle to impact our schools on a shoestring budget like you guys can. Here's this money, help us implement it in our local community. We will do that.
So we can do that on a one-off basis, but really what we are the most passionate about is creating sustainable change. And the ways that we would do that require more investment. And I don't just mean money, I also mean like emotionally and time-wise. What we would need essentially is we have a terrible business model. We're trying to work ourselves out of a job. We do not want to be needed in a place. So our goal is actually to come in and help build a team that is locally based in a place that can take the sort of like the grind, the information that we have like kind of polarized into we've been able to sort of package this into a methodology, right? Like the way that we go in and we assess a school, it identifies the gaps in their programs based on their context and allows them to be in the driver's seat, but they don't know what they don't know essentially. And what we want is to find a place where there's high need. We want to find some sort of a benefactor who's willing to get this process started. We need to be able to build a team, which means it takes funding to be able to get there, to stay there, to train, to find schools to work with. I mean, that whole process, we have we have that done. It's kind of like if you think about like franchising a business, like if I
Right.
was the inventor of McDonald's and I've got one store and you're in another city and you want a McDonald's, I can come in and tell you exactly how to start a McDonald's, but it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Unsustainable. Yeah.
And yeah, it's about what we want is like Robby and I also are finite entities. We cannot run this in every place. So we need to find people who we can train up, who care, who want to who want to get back to their communities and yeah. So yeah, so we're looking for people who are passionate about serving, who have the resources to help a project like this start, as well as educators. It requires experienced educators to be able to actually pull this off too. One of the things that Robby didn't mention in Puerto Rico that is actually part of how we go about training is that because we have a heart for sustainable change, he created a program called the Flock Leader Program. So if you see his shirt, he's got the little Puerto Rican parrot. That's that tangram is our little mascot. And so the flock leader, when birds fly in a V, that's the front guys, the flock leader. So we have a program where we identify one or two people from every school that we work in who is really has that passion and drive and leadership qualities and is interested in what we're doing, and we pay them a small stipend to become part of our team with, and they're like boots on the ground, and it has allowed us to expand our footprint without just continually making our team kind of overgrown. So we have our core team, and part of what our tech integrators end up doing is liaising with the flock leaders from those schools. And the longer the school is with us and the more that flock leader is spun up on how we do things, the less sort of in-person influence it requires from our team, right? So
Exactly.
that's the sustainable model. The model is ultimately like if your school is with us for 4 or 5 years, we would like to take our hands off the wheel and let you completely drive. So it's a model where kind of we drive at the beginning and then we're teaching you how to drive, and then it's like driver's training, right? For
And
for a
over.
teenager learning to drive. So and eventually, yeah, we hand them the keys and we don't want to be there anymore. And it's not because we don't love you and we don't want to be there. We always want to like hear about your successes, but what we ultimately want is for you to be successful, just like we want our kids to be successful without us having to constantly have the same level of impact, as a
Hold
parent
their
or as a
hand.
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's what
you,
we're looking for when we're open to literally any place on this planet, where there's need and there's a desire to
Robbie's
work.
laughing like, oh, what do you? So
Yeah,
there's
it's true.
That's right.
100%.
you're creating change agents essentially, which is amazing. And I mean, my parents were both teachers, so there's a huge network of people that I'm going to definitely share this conversation with, and we'll see how we can get this into Africa. But what I wanted to ask you is just some heartfelt stories. Like,
Mm.
a child or teacher that, you've seen the transition, you've seen the impact. I mean, I read some of the testimonials on your website, Robby. It's a beautiful website, by the way. It's so organized. And one of the kids was like, I can code now. Like, I never would have thought I could code. And there was a flock leader as well that said that, she's learned so much from this process and she's grown so much. Please share some of those stories with us that have impacted you and really kept you inspired to continue.
Yeah, so I'll go back to that first school. We serve a lot of different schools, but I'll start with the first school because this school, it, and I hate to say it, it looked a bit like Africa. It was just concrete slabs with the flat roof. It had a chalkboard, desks, and a fan. That was it. And electricity that works sometimes, if you know what I mean. And so that was this school, but they just had such great spirit, and they always were ready to learn. And when we'd come in and do trainings with them, they're always very open-minded and very gracious. Anytime we brought any technology, very appreciative, and they would implement it. We track data and see how they're doing, and we've just grown with this school. And there's a lot of movement in schools in Puerto Rico because they're getting paid such a small salary. Now, for some of your listeners, this may not seem like a small salary, but contextually, it's a small salary. So, for example, to put it in context, my brother, he's a PE teacher, physical education teacher in San Diego, and he makes around $105,000, $110,000 per year to be a PE teacher, right? Any teacher here can move to San Diego tomorrow and get that same job. And if anything, they're going to get an easier chance getting the job because they're bilingual. And being from San Diego, it's close to the border. They're always looking for bilingual educators, right? So teachers here are making between $1,500 to $1,800 per month. So they're making, and they only get paid 10 months out of the year. So they're making less than $20,000 a year. And so because of that, there's a lot of teachers who leave. They stay for a bit and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to go to New York or Texas or Houston or whatever, or maybe just a little bit higher paying school, a school that pays $2,000 a month. They'll just up and leave mid-year to just financially migrate to a school across town. So there isn't a lot of continuity, but this particular group has just a ton of continuity. The teachers stay because they love the product, they love the team, they love the little community. And I've been able to see these teachers grow. And we at our conference, we have something we call the Tech Disruptors Conference competition. And that's where any teacher can apply to showcase how they've used technology in the classroom in a very innovative way. And we have 5 different thematic brackets. Like, one is how you use data, one is entrepreneurial, one is through the arts, another is just everyday tech, and et cetera. So there's one particular teacher, one of the first teachers I observed as, a TechMySchool guy helping the teachers. And I've just kind of watched her grow as an educator, and she became our flock leader. And so she, for years, was working with us as a flock leader, helping us train her own staff. And I've just kind of seen her grow and her progression. But she also, this particular school, they had like 8 submissions for the Tech Disruptor. So it was like half the submissions came from this one little school that was the least financed of all of them. And they put together such great exemplars. And that one flock leader teacher, she ended up winning for her, her bracket, her category. And she had such a cool, innovative way of teaching. It was the product. Essentially, what she did was she had her kids learn the periodic table using AI in a sense where each kid was assigned a different element, and then they had to turn that element into a superhero. And so all these
I
elements became
love
superheroes, and
that.
it became kind of like really personalized for each kid. And they get a little report on their element, and it was, gold man and silver man or whatever, silver surfer. And so they had their own thing. And she just had this beautiful display. She was a science teacher, and it just was so cool, so innovative. There were other teachers that did also amazing stuff, but it was just like this school that had no resources that, you know, by all means had no business doing the kind of innovative work they were doing, were doing this like cutting edge stuff in their classrooms. And as that happened, I kind of, stepped back, and I was like, as they were presenting it and as we were going through it, I was just kind of like, that's crazy. Like, it's crazy to know where they started and to where they are, because they're beating out all these other schools. Because we have in our network now every type of school in Puerto Rico. We have wealthiest schools, we have middle of the road schools, we have, high performing charter schools and everything in between. And this school is just blowing these other schools out of the water using all these strategies because we've been with them for 5 years. And I know I was just like, it's real. This transformational impact is real. And people like to throw that word around, transformation and all that kind of thing, but it really is. And the impact is real as you've seen, as we've been able to see them grow over the years. So that's one long-winded story about how we've served. I mean, there's a million of them, but
I can
uh,
imagine.
that one was just kind of hits hardest for me just
That one's
because,
really driven by mindset, right? Like that school,
yeah,
like you said, kind
100%.
of had they had no business getting to be as good as they are, right? And they took on Robbie's thinking. They had a growth mindset. They said when he came in, they're like, yeah, we can learn from this guy. We can really learn and grow. And that's exactly what they did. And he has for every school that has that mindset and kind of lets us in. And I don't
Mm.
mean physically, I mean lets us in sort of emotionally and culturally within that school culture. There's another example of one who is like, just give us the free stuff and get out, you know?
Right.
And so we see both. And so and you can guess which one's growing and which one's not because you can giving free stuff. We play Santa Claus and we deliver computers. They love that, and that's like the press loves that. But that's not the value add of TechMySchool. Anybody can donate computers. The value add is one-on-one training. The value add is like observations and feedback. And like in education, we talk about reflection and feedback a lot as best practices, and we're providing them sort of the resources to be able to do that. And I
Yeah, I
love it. And
mean,
by the way, Sarika, I've heard Robbie's stories about his personal life and this journey starting the company and about these schools hundreds of times, and I literally never get tired of hearing
I mean,
about this. Like I can listen to Robbie all the time talk about these
I just wanted
schools.
to put one small tidbit into it. I mean, these teachers were literally teaching out of a 6 by 12 storage container. So like there's this concrete slab of a school that's behind a church, no playgrounds, no fields, no library, no nothing, no cafeteria. That was the first school we started serving, but because we're doing such great things, we are helping them market, they were expanding in their student body. And so they actually just rented these storage containers and we helped turn those into classrooms. And so you're just in this little box and they're doing all this cool, innovative stuff. And we bought them TVs, we got them computers, they helped them with the internet and stuff. And then they just went and comparing those, I'm just knowing that campus and the work they're doing in that campus, and then comparing it with these other campuses and schools where they have like everything, but these guys are beating them out. That was just like super cool, and just a
Yeah,
testament to that. Like it's not what you have, it's who you are and how you learn that having that growth mindset.
Exactly. And I mean, if you can plant a seed anywhere, right? But if it doesn't land on in a space that's fertile where people are open, it's not going to go anywhere. And I've experienced that in my career as well. You can talk until you're blue in the face, you can try and convince people to do things, but if they don't have the growth mindset, if they don't have the passion, then um, yeah, it's almost impossible, really. Um,
there's Zig Ziglar had that great quote where he said, "If you refuse to learn, no one can help you, and if you're
right.
determined to learn, no one can stop you."
Stop you. I absolutely love that. So on that note, by the way, when you were speaking about those stories, I just felt the passion level just rise. And before I ask my next question, I mean the energy, I could just feel what I wanted to say is, and I really feel like what you're doing is work that is in alignment with who you are and your purpose and your calling. And it seems like fated alchemy, that meeting on the beach, Robbie, that, the Act 60, and then the networking, and then Kyle coming in. It just feels like all the puzzles came together so beautifully. And I think it's because you are in alignment and you believe in what you do. And I just really want to commend you for that. And you inspired me to continue on my entrepreneurial journey as well. But talking about being unstoppable, if you had, and yeah, closing question or a couple of questions, if you had unlimited resources, where would you go next with Tech My School?
Yeah. So, and Kyle and I have kind of personally asked ourselves this question, like, what do we do? Let's say our software takes off and it makes hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you do? My goal was to come to a beautiful place and to relax. And I learned that I can't do that. I can't just, even if I had the money to hang out, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna serve. That's just ingrained in the DNA, and Kyle's the same way. So really it would just be more of the same. It would be more of the same that we're doing now. We go to where those a combination of two things. One, a place of great need, a place that really needs our support, but then also a place that is really open to that service and that wants to learn as well. Because we've had schools that we've taken on and we really wanted to help that school because it was in such need and the mindset just wasn't there. So we'd come in, we'd donate hundreds of computers, spend thousands on software, bring foods, energy, just the whole lot, observe classrooms, give the free coding classes for kids, and the director would just be gone. Like we come to a professional development, we've planned and prepared for it. No one's there. We're like walking around the school, knocking on doors. Hey, come to the training. It's at this time. A fourth of the people show up. They're on their phones. There's no,
Mm.
you know what I mean? It's
I
just not
know
worth
that
it when you,
feeling. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, you're just like, I'm here to serve you, but you aren't ready to serve yourself. So I think it'd be a combination of those two things. But, we're global citizens. We feel that every kid deserves a world-class education. And that's kind of the fire that sparked TechMySchool initially was the fact I didn't tell you this, but I grew up very poor. So my grandfather was also grew up very poor, but he worked really hard and became very wealthy. And he created the largest construction drywalling company in San Diego. So he had over 500 employees. He had 11 kids, and all those kids went to private schools. They were just like, they had it all, right? And so my dad was the beneficiary of being growing up wealthy. He went to a private school. He was given houses just for being the son of this wealthy guy. And he, started along that journey as an entrepreneur and started to, keep the snowball going of success. But then tragedy hit. His wife, my mom, died when I was 5 years old. She went to a party, she was murdered. Kind of, and that doesn't happen all the time. It's kind of a rare thing, but she did. She was murdered. And so he kind of lost it and kind of gave up on
Sorry.
life. Yeah. And so because of that, he was also very proud. So he's like, I refuse to take any handouts. I'll never take handouts from the government. I'll never take handouts from anyone. And so I grew up in this house where there was no electricity, there was no food, there wasn't running water a lot of times. There was no windows, like a window would break and it would just never be replaced. Like that kind of lifestyle. So for my childhood, it was like I was the poorest kid. I was hungry every day. My only food was coming to school and getting that free lunch at school. If I didn't have that, I probably would have starved to death. And knowing that in America, you are given this kind of golden ticket. You're given this golden rope if you hold on and take it. I had spent a career initially at the start of my career working in inner city schools, working in the poor schools, and because I knew that I wanted to be an educator pretty early on. When I graduated high school, I wasn't thinking I wanted to be an educator. I was like, oh, I'll be a sports. I love sports. I'll be a sports writer. I love to write. But I got an opportunity to work in a school helping kids how to read. And I needed it because I was trying to get a library job at the university, like, get paid to do your homework. And they're like, oh, that job's taken, but we'll let you work in a school helping kids to read. And I was thinking, yeah, I want to be a good dad one day. Really don't want to be a teacher, but I'll give it a shout. And this is my freshman year of college. And I went back to that elementary school and all of those emotions came flooding back of this safe place where adults cared about you, where kids can go and learn and just be free and not have these like this trouble that you face at home. It all just kind of came back. I had experienced it as a kid, but I kind of like suppressed it a little bit. And by the time I was 12 years old, I had already been working at a job, under the table. And then when I was 15, I got a proper job at a restaurant. So I'd been taking care of myself since I was a little kid. And I really wasn't thinking about kids who need things or just the structure of society, I guess you could say. And so going back to that first school, working in an inner city school in Hawaii, it really hit me very quickly within that first month, I'm like, I'm changing my major. I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to serve kids. And so I knew that's kind of the essence who I was. And I was lucky in the sense that being born in America, everyone's given this public education that's, I'm not going to say world class, but it's good. It's a good education where you can, you know, work hard and succeed in working in these inner city schools. I had never met a kid who worked really hard who, didn't make it. And if anything, they were given like kind of front of the line status because they had to overcome so much in their poor background. They were able to, get accepted to Harvard or UCLA or a number of other great institutions, and then continue on and become successful in life. And that's America, is that it doesn't matter, what you are or what you look like, it's who you are. If you're a hardworking person and you value education internally, you're going to be able to be successful. But the problem in these inner city schools is mostly socially, and this construct of like their family members and leaders that they know in their life don't value education. If anything, they talk bad about it. Their friends are like, why are you studying? You should be out in the streets with us having fun or doing drugs or whatever. And so it's hard for those kids kind of psychologically to
Mhm.
overcome that. But the school system is there. You have teachers who care about you, you have the institutions, they have all the things. Here in Puerto Rico, it's the opposite. You have great kids, great families, but the school systems themselves are broken. And so, teachers are getting paid very little. Everyone's kind of leaving. The schools don't have these programs. And so there isn't this golden rope to pull yourself out of. Whereas after traveling to like 65 countries, I've been to Africa, I've been to India, I've been to all these different places where you meet great kids, but you know, they weren't born with the right gender. They weren't born with the right religion. They weren't born from the right tribe. They aren't born in the right family. And so because of that, no matter how hard they worked or how much they cared, they'd always only reach a certain level of success. Where in America, it's not like that. Barack Obama, his dad was from Kenya. He knocked up his mom and left. And you have this single mom who ended up raising him in Indonesia, coming back and then living in Hawaii, which is not great for education to start. And then he was able to just work hard. And like I'm saying, he worked hard and went to school and university, and rightfully so, he rose to the top and became our president. And he was an excellent example of what a president should look like and sound like. And that story is really impactful. And it really made me proud to be an American because that's someone who, it's the American dream, right? Not
Yeah.
every country gets that American dream. And so here in Puerto Rico, it's America, but they don't get the dream because, I'm talking to
Okay.
17-year-old kids who barely speak English. They read at a fourth or fifth grade level. They've never touched a computer before. Maybe they had a phone, but they've
Where do
never
you
like,
go from there? What do you
yeah, it's
do
like,
now?
how do you compare that to someone who's, in San Antonio or New York or,
Mhm.
San Diego who've been given the same citizen, same American, but they just, are competing with these people and, have literally next to no chance to unless they do a ton of just personal learning and maybe they have some external force that are helping them. So long story, but that's kind of the why as to why I'm so passionate about serving, why I'm so passionate about giving the kids here that rope. And education is that, is the foundation of society. I mean, you look at any country, GDP and test scores are, very, very, there's a corollary there. It's like if you have high GDP, you're going to have high test scores. If you have low test scores, you're going to have low GDP. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like education bleeds into everything else.
Can I just add one thing to that
Of
too?
course.
Is that we have a very strong belief. Robbie and I are fortunate that we're not just idealists. We also work in technology and schools, and we believe very strongly that technology has the power to bridge that gap between the haves and the have-nots. Unfortunately, capitalism has made it so that technology is still really only available to the wealthiest people. So technology, and I'm going to say especially software, yes, it costs money to develop, but it's not like if I make a car, if I sell a car to a rich person or I sell a car to a poor person, that car costs me the same amount to make, right? Software, once developed, it really does not cost a lot of money to give it away to people who can't afford it. So we've created an equity-based pricing system for all the software that we resell. So the more the less money you charge your students, or the more impoverished your area, the greater the discounts are that we can get for you for those. And that's part of our philanthropy. And Robby and I both created and own software companies that we are able to leverage to that advantage. So I will sell you my software as a wealthy school, and you don't get a discount on it. And that money goes back to helping to subsidize that same software for the people who can't afford it. We believe, so there's that phrase, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. Technology has the power to do that. AI has the power to do that. But right now, we're only lining the pockets of a few people, and everybody should be benefiting from this technology, and they're not. And so for me, like, there's a rage inside of me that is sort of like the injustice of not giving impoverished communities access to technology, which can help to bring them. That, to me, like, that's the mobile version of this golden rope that he's talking about. Puerto Rico, it's not built to have that rope where a kid can climb out, right? They work hard, they have strong family ties, like, they have all the things going for them. The system has not provided the rope. And to be honest, we shouldn't exist. If the world, and let's just say Puerto Rico, if the government there was doing the job they're supposed to be doing, there'd be no need for us, right? And like, that's my dream, is for the world to not need us, or anything like us. But that's not the world we're in. And what we would like to do is we would like to partner with people who also believe that technology has the power to very efficiently help people out of the mire. So, like, that is, like, kind of in a nutshell, one of the reasons I joined, because I saw, not only, like, do I get to ride the coattails of a brilliant person like Robby, um, I saw an opportunity for us to, like, absolutely scale our impact. And it's not for me, like, yeah, that would be rewarding, but there are so many people that need help. There are so many people who have a similar story to Robby, who are in places where that dangling rope is just not there. They cannot climb out on their own. So, like, let us help. Let us
South
help
Africa,
provide that
for
rope for
one.
people.
It bridges inequality. That's what I love about what you're saying. You're working with, something that bridges inequality and with your own values. And I think there was a reason, Robby, you chose Puerto Rico and not Zanzibar. I keep coming. There's just such a beautiful um, synchronicity to the story. And yeah, thank you again. Thank you for the work that you do and for the inspiration. And I'm definitely going to share this with everyone that I know in education in Africa. I mean, I've got a network of people, and see how we can support you, to scale this and to carry forward the vision. You're doing amazing work. Thanks so much for reaching out and for being on. And listeners as well. I mean, please comment. Please, what I'll do is I'll put your website and your contact details in the description box of the podcast. So if anyone wants to reach out or donate, um, those details will be in the description. But then, is there anything else you would like to say then in closing, Kyle, Robby?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
start.
hit us up.
First,
If No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you for listening. And I mean, a very easy support is just go to Instagram, type in TechMySchool, and follow us there. As you follow us, it spreads the message, it spreads the work that we're doing, and that's just an easy one. And then obviously, if you go to techmyschool.org, there's a donation page, but there's also the conference. So if you're an educator and you'd want to come to Puerto Rico, have this beautiful vacation learning experience, we'd love to have you as a speaker or guest or attendee. If you're interested in supporting your school with, strategic planning, check us out at techplangenie.com. And Kyle has a phenomenal software that we haven't really talked about. It's called Relief Roster. So that's another great software that if you buy that, it helps our mission. Relief Roster, I'll let Kyle speak to that.
Sure. That's funny. Thanks. Shameless plug time. Yeah, so that piece of software is mainly to help schools with something that's very annoying, which is scheduling substitute teachers. So it's a pretty robust system developed after 20 years of trying to help schools to sort of solve this internally. We created a platform managing absences, PTO, substitutes, and then also volunteer onboarding, event management for volunteers. So um, super unsexy software that is super efficient and helpful.
Helpful.
But yeah, so the last thing I would say is so we always we always sign off our our community emails with join the flock. So if you want to join the flock, hit us up, and we'd love to partner with you. And there are you don't have to be an educator. You can be an educator. There are so many ways people can get involved. And if you want your community to if you want to talk about what we can do to help you help your community, then we'd love to talk. So info@techmyschool.org.
Thank you. I'll definitely
Yeah,
be
thanks so much
here
for having us on, Sarika.
and joining the
Thank
flock.
you.
And I
Thanks,
am already
everybody.
following you on Instagram. So
Awesome.
cool. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
Thank
Take
All
you.
right.
care. Until next
Thanks.
time.
Have a great day. All right.